Hey everyone, welcome to this explainer. We're skipping the usual preamble today because, honestly, we've got a fascinating and incredibly highly charged topic to unpack. I mean, if you spent literally any time online recently, you know the atmosphere of modern internet debates is, well, it's dense, it's anxious, and it's so polarized. Today we're going to dissect the very anatomy of being offended. We'll be doing this by looking through the analytical lens of YouTuber OtherBarak, who recently put out a breakdown of a deeply chaotic, really fiery exchange at a famous university debating union. Now, our goal here isn't to take political sides, not at all. It's to objectively map out the psychology of a modern cultural clash. We really want to understand what actually happens when provocative speech meets modern fragility and how self-awareness might just be the absolute ultimate tool for navigating the whole shebang.
Okay, let's dive into this. Right out of the gate, we're hit with this incredibly stark, fiery clash of realities. This exact exchange is what kicked off the entire confrontation between a union student and the highly controversial commentator, Katie Hopkins. The student attempts to pin Hopkins to a super-inflammatory accusation, basically claiming she called for a final solution against Muslims. But Hopkins doesn't even flinch. She immediately corrects the record, asserting her words were specifically targeted at Islamist terror. So right away, the terms of engagement are set. This isn't just some polite disagreement over tea, This is a battle over the exact definitions of words and the heavy, real-world implications they carry.
Section 1. The Oxford Union Clash. High tension and nefarious agendas.
In these environments, tension is literally the baseline. The audience is totally primed for conflict, and the speakers, they're braced for impact. We're going to impartially observe how accusations of nefarious agendas get thrown around and how the architecture of a public debate can instantly turn into a hostile sparring match. To really understand the dynamic in the room, let's look at how the opening clash breaks down structurally. The student attempts to corner Hopkins, accusing her of masking a violent agenda. But then, the student takes this massive, tactical risk. He attempts to use his own right to offend by mocking Hopkins' physical appearance. It's a blatant attempt at public humiliation. But how does the speaker react? Well, Hopkins completely neutralizes it. She points out that demanding apologies doesn't address factual matters at all, and calmly declares that the student has actually only succeeded in humiliating himself. It's honestly a masterclass in emotional regulation under fire. The heckler's attempt to shame completely misfires, simply because the target refuses to accept the shame.
Moving on to Section 2, the right to offend, the anatomy of modern fragility.
And this brilliantly illustrates how that failed insult pivots the entire narrative. Hopkins launches into an uninterrupted monologue defending her absolute right to offend the audience, offering a deeper philosophical diagnosis of what she views as the anatomy of modern fragility. Her worldview regarding resilience presents a pretty stark contrast. On one side, she lists modern identities, cultural affiliations, dietary restrictions, political stances, arguing that a lot of individuals today actually arrive pre-programmed to be offended. It's like their outrage is almost written into their societal roles. On the other side, she places the concept of tested sinews, referencing the raw, rigorous environment of a military academy like Sandhurst. Her argument is inherently structural. Are we protecting people so much that they become fragile? Or are we challenging them so they can build true strength? It's a really provocative question that challenges the very foundation of modern trigger warning culture.
So, what does this all mean? This brings us to the core psychological thesis of her speech. According to the source material, Hopkins argues that the literal act of taking offense is a symptom of a deeper internal wound. Basically, when you're offended, it's because someone has poked at an insecurity, a place where you lack self-knowledge. By her logic, the external words aren't the weapon. Your own lack of internal fortitude is the true vulnerability. It's a fascinating reframing, right? It takes the power completely away from the person doing the offending and places the responsibility squarely on the person feeling offended.
Section 3. Emotions versus weakness, a surprising point of agreement.
Now, a heavy psychological claim like that, it naturally prompts a response. Let's shift the pacing a bit as we move into a second, much more inquisitive interaction between the audience and the speaker. This is where the debate transforms from a shouting match into an actual philosophical inquiry. Another student steps up with an incredibly direct, highly perceptive challenge. They ask, why is feeling an emotion equated with weakness? I mean, it's a great question. We're human beings. We feel things. Is the mere biological reality of experiencing an uncomfortable emotion proof that we're fragile? The student is trying to untangle the difference between having an emotional reaction and being controlled by it.
Now, here's what's truly interesting. Hopkins gives a completely surprising response. You might expect a controversial provocateur to just dismiss the student entirely, right? But instead, she agrees. She validates the student's premise. She states that feeling the uncomfortable emotion, actually sitting with the acute sting of being offended, is a vital, non-negotiable step toward recovery. You literally can't bypass the pain if you want to build resilience. You have to feel it to heal it.
And this isn't just abstract theory. It builds directly into real-world application. Hopkins shares a highly specific, very vulnerable anecdote. She recounts a time she was maliciously tricked into flying out to receive a fake award. I mean, she experienced intentional humiliation on an international scale. But look at her steps to survival here. She showed up, she kept her word, she treated the staff kindly, and ultimately, she overcame the public shaming by relying on her own self-knowledge. She left the toxic, uncomfortable bits with the people who orchestrated the prank. She absolutely refused to absorb their toxicity.
Section 4. The Power of Self-Awareness, OtherBarak's Meta-Analysis.
At this point, we're going to pivot this explainer away from that noisy debate floor and step back into the calmer, psychological breakdown provided by the YouTuber OtherBarak. To give you a grounded context of our narrator's state of mind, OtherBarak recorded this analysis entirely impromptu, literally running on fumes right after stepping off a 12-hour international flight from Israel to the US. Despite the travel exhaustion, the raw dynamics of the debate compelled them to immediately unpack the underlying psychology at play. I think it highlights just how universally recognizable these social dynamics really are.
So, the crucial point here is understanding exactly what OtherBarak means when he observes that a speaker like Hopkins has clearly done her inner work. He defines this not as some mystical concept, but as practical, hard-fought psychological resilience. Inner work is the grueling process of acknowledging your own personal pain and sitting with your uncomfortable emotions. When you do that, external provocations, like a heckler calling you names, lose their power. The external world can no longer trigger a deep, destabilizing offense because you've already conquered that terrain internally.
Looking through OtherBarak's impartial lens, we can clearly contrast the two entirely different debate tactics that were used in that room. The heckler strategy was entirely external, relying on public shaming, superficial insults, and peer pressure to win the argument. But the speaker's strategy? It was internal. She utilized the immense power of silence, consciousness, and self-awareness. OtherBarak points out that her calm demeanor completely neutralized the attempted public shaming. When the heckler swung his rhetorical punch, there was simply nothing for it to land on.
And our final section, Section 5, Navigating Polarizing Conversations, the Real-World Application. We really need to connect these heavy, abstract concepts of dialectics and psychological resilience directly back to your daily life. Because the truth is, we are all navigating these types of polarizing environments every single day. Synthesizing the source material, OtherBarak extracts a highly practical, three-step framework for navigating today's incredibly toxic internet culture. Step 1. Actually allow yourself to be offended. Don't repress it. Step 2. Investigate that feeling. Understand why this specific topic, or this specific insult, upsets you so deeply. Like, what insecurity is it touching? And finally, Step 3. Use that newfound self-awareness to consciously rise above the emotional reaction. You move from being a victim of your emotions to an observer of them. It's a real game changer.
To wrap up her speech, Hopkins uses an incredibly extreme, highly provocative metaphor. She tells the audience, "Let us dress as Nazi Elvis and stride boldly and cause offense if we must." We include this quote impartially to remind you of the scale of provocation we're analyzing here. Her point, stripped of the shock value, is a plea against tiptoeing around life. It is an argument that absolute freedom of speech, even the most absurd and offensive variations of it, must be exercised boldly.
And this ties everything perfectly back to OtherBarak's ultimate takeaway. The entire reason we must analyze these chaotic debates is because deploying strict self-awareness is the only way we can hope to have healthier conversations about the world's most impossible, deeply polarizing issues. OtherBarak explicitly points to the Middle Eastern conflict as a prime example. If we enter those conversations pre-programmed to take offense, armed only with external shaming tactics, we get absolutely nowhere.
So, we're going to leave you with this final provocative thought to ponder. As you scroll through your feed today or step into a debate with a colleague, ask yourself, how could practicing strict self-awareness change the way you react the next time you encounter a highly polarizing argument? What happens when you stop trying to control the person offending you and start mastering the terrain within yourself? Thank you so much for joining this explainer. Keep asking the hard questions, and we'll see you next time.